Okay, so for anyone that's not familiar with you, why don't you tell us a little bit about what yourself and what you've been doing?
All right. Hey, folks. My name is Adam Smith. I'm an entrepreneur. I coach and consult. Actually, just came out with a new book, The Bravest You, on May 30th. And it talks a lot about who I am, what I do, and most of the problems that people face that I coach every week. Um, and the main thing that people run into is fear. And we can talk about that a little bit
Okay,
more.
well, why don't we start there then, since you brought up your book. What would you say
Yeah.
the number one fear is that's holding the average person back? Like, what's the main fear that they probably need to address?
It would definitely be the fear of failure. That's what I've faced in my own life. I've coached a little over 300 people over the last 4 years. Also consulted businesses along the way, and so as that research pool, those people, 300 people, fear of failure. They're fearful of taking the first step in whatever their endeavor is, whether it is starting a business or going for a promotion at their job or going to school. Whether you're watching this and you're in college, you already have a business, you're aspiring to own a business, you probably have a lot of fears, and that one of them is probably the fear of failure. And so my advice to you would be, are your ideas bigger than your fears? And so if you have huge ideas, then you have to be passionate about it. And so instead of focusing on your fears, focus on passion instead. It would be my advice to you. Because fear will come. I'm not one who believes that you can be totally fearless. Those people that sell that's not real life. I own 2 businesses. In the beginning, I was coming across financial problems. That's a huge fear. You need money, and so you need clients. You need traction. And so what I did is talking in the pre-interview. I was talking about the shoe store that I owned early on, but what I did instead, because I don't like marketing myself, I don't like marketing products personally. The book is the first thing I've had to sell in years, because I had my shoe store, I had an income, I had cash flow. So instead of trying to sell a bunch of products to people, I created an audience for Smith blog. asmithblog.com is my website that I've blogged on for 10 years now. And so another big problem that people face is they want it and they want it now. And so 10 years of blogging, I finally wrote a book, and it took tons of patience to get where I'm at. But some great advice to people watching today too is start where you're at. What can you do where you're at with what you have? And for me, that was to start a blog, to start writing. And so I gained an audience probably within the first 5 years. But my blog changed 4 times before I landed on what I blog about today. And so life is a bunch of trial and error. You have to have patience, and you got to put in the work, and whatever that might look like. So that's a long answer, but I believe that adds value to people watching today. Wherever you're at, whatever you have, you can do something, you can make an impact. And blogging is a free tool that's available to everyone, whether it's blogging or a podcast or videos. You can add value today. So.
Well, I think it's a great answer. If you follow your passion, as you said, there are many free outlets out there to share it. And that audience first principle, a lot of people don't even realize, like in Amazon. Amazon lost hundreds of millions of dollars a year for the first several years building an audience. And that's how they were able to grow to where they are now, is because they built that first, and then they brought in the products, and then they expanded. So even though you don't like marketing, you hit on a really good marketing principle there.
Right. I mean, exactly. And, passion is such a buzzword. I wrestled with using that. Going back to, I wrote a book. That's the main principle. Passion always leads to bravery, and I wrestled with using that. I wrestled with talking about passion because it's such a buzzword. But principles work, and they work for a reason. And so passion is here to stay. It's been talked about for years. It's going to keep, it's going to stay around because it works. And so whether you can pursue your passion through a full-time job, or you have to pursue it on the side like I did, and you eventually grow an audience to so much, and 70,000 readers on my blog, and so you can imagine the questions that come from that many people. And so my audience told me what my business should be. I needed to coach and consult. I needed to put a monetary value on my time because I have a family. And so you can't, just do everything for free when that many people show up, and you put a monetary value on your time, and you can add more value that way, and you come up with curriculum for the people who want to pay, and you can sit one-on-one with people, because very rarely does one size fits all advice work. That's why coaching and consulting works, because I sit down with people. I know what their circumstance is. Given the advice, everybody should be a morning person, but you talk with a nurse that works nights in the ER, and she just wants to live a better life. If I were to tell her that she needs to become a morning person, and she works, 8 p.m. to 8 a.m., she's not going to be a morning person. She's got to sleep, And so sitting down with people, listening to where they're at, knowing where they're coming from, and then giving advice is the best way to give advice. And so I don't want to talk about my book more, but in my book I give a bunch of exercises, because for me to come out and say this is what you should do without knowing where you're coming from is not very responsible of me, I feel. So to give people exercises to know, so you can know yourself, know where you're coming from, I believe is the only way to start. You have to know yourself before you can make any improvements in your life. So
I think the principles are good, asking your customers what they need to come up with what you're going to sell them, and making sure you have transactional relationships, not just relational relationships, especially for new business owners. I think a lot of people get stuck in that we want to be friends, and then turning a friendship into a business relationship is tricky. Whereas a business relationship, if everyone's getting value, is still a great relationship. So you shouldn't be afraid of that. So I think a good question, and it sounds like you address in your book a little bit, in a modern world where everything's at our fingertips and we're constantly bombarded with stuff, how do you figure out what your passion is anymore? I think in the past it was a little easier because there were limits, and you could look out there and say, I want that. Now you can see everything in the world, and you probably want hundreds of things. How do you figure out what you focus on and what you chase?
Part of passion is doing what you love. I mean, that's a lot of it. But, and coming down to what would you do for free? What would you devote more time to? I think eliminates a lot, because in this world where everybody's busy, where everybody does want to put a monetary value on their time. And so for me, that was writing. And I knew I had to write a book, blogging for 10 years. I wasn't making money for 7 of them. And so what could I do for free? How could I add value? But then meeting that with what people need, because that's the only way you're going to ever turn passion into a job. Because you have to make money off of it to turn it into something full-time. That is if you want to do it full-time. If you are happy pursuing it on the side and giving things away for free, I don't charge as much as a lot of coaches and consultants, because my goal in life, I don't necessarily need more money. My goal in life isn't to make more money. It's to impact as many lives as I can. And so when I charge less, I don't charge, such a minimal fee where there isn't a presence of value, because when people hand over money, they expect value in return. My principle with that is to charge a decent rate, but then to add value back in return so much where I over execute to where they tell other people. My whole business has grown by word of mouth for that reason. But you have to meet your passion with what people need. And I think a lot of people probably watching this are wondering how to turn their passion into a business, right? So not everybody wants to work 100 hours a week. I love what I do. I love to work. It's I don't necessarily brag that I work 100 hours, or 80 or 70 or 60. Some people want to work 20, 10 hours a week, and that's fine too. That again goes back to knowing yourself, knowing what the people around you need. And this time I have a 5-year-old and a 2-year-old. I can't work as much as I did at one time because I have a family. And I think it's knowing that present season you're in, and working things to your schedule accordingly, and being responsible with that, and knowing yourself, not only knowing yourself, but knowing what other people need from you.
Sounds like a smart formula.
Oh.
So now that we segued a little bit into family, we in pre-interview we talked about that a little bit. I know you like to talk about relationships. You give a lot of information and insight onto that. A lot of business owners run into that problem where they get kind of tied up in their business and the stress of the business and focusing on the business. How do you keep the focus on your family that you need? How do you keep that work-life balance? What are your thoughts on that?
It comes back to priorities and what you want to be known for and the legacy you want to leave, and what do you want to get to the end of your life? Do you want a bunch of regret? And so I'd rather my kids and my wife 20 years later from now to be happy with the way that I was around, the way I treated them throughout. Not, I don't want that discussion of, hey, you're working way too much. I want to be on top of that because they're a bigger priority than business. And so, to me, and that's honest. And some people will say that and it's not honest because you can look at their schedule and they'll say family is their top priority, but it's obviously not, because business is. Now, I'm going through a busy season right now. I think it's important to know what season you're in, going back to the last answer. I'm in book launch mode right now. I'm working a lot, but I promised them once I'm out of this, I'm taking some time off because again, my daughter is 5 and my son is 2, and you don't get these moments back. And it's realizing that and knowing what kind of life you want to lead and living the example. I don't want to be all talk, I want my life to show what I say is important. I don't want to just say this is like a counseling session. It feels like, but going back to your question and answering it completely, I used to try to separate work and life a lot more than I do now, because the demands are higher than they once were. And so knowing that I want my family to view me as the dad and husband that I want to be, but then on the other side of that is leading through not only my life but through business. And so being the example that I want to push others to become. I can't coach and consult and not have a good business. I can't coach other people in life and not live a good life. And so in a way that's put a lot of responsibility on me. It's given me a lot of accountability. And so not trying to be one person elsewhere and being someone somewhere else. And so knowing that I have that responsibility to have a good business too. And so right now in the season that I'm in, work weaves a lot into my life. And so especially with writing and consulting and life coaching, I wouldn't be honest if I say it doesn't take up a lot of mental power. I'm thinking about people. I'm thinking about writing the subject. I spent 3 years writing this last book and researching. And the last 3 years I've been consumed in bravery, fear, and passion. And so in dealing with editors and dealing with clients and dealing with being a great husband and dad at home. And yeah, it's been busy. I'm not going to say that I'm perfect and every moment has been perfect, because that wouldn't be honest. And those people out there that are dealing with that struggle, I would say that's life. And so the biggest thing that you need to grab hold of during these seasons, well, one, you need to make sure it's a season and not a lifestyle. I'm not going to go 90 miles an hour through life for the rest of my life, and treating life as seasons. Of course, you can't just drop work completely in seasons. You're going to need to, work a lot at certain times, and you can take off at others. And going back to what I was just saying, that's what I plan on doing.
So do you put limitations on the seasons to make sure that they don't turn into years or annuals?
Communication. Communication is key. I'm communicating with my wife constantly. I'm communicating with employees and clients, and making sure that things are in order, and still checking in. But there's some points where you can't be hands-on 24/7 like you once were. Your business hopefully is going to outgrow that. You're going to have to hire people. You're going to have to trust people. A lot of people have a problem with trusting others. That's something you're just going to have to get over at some point to grow your business, to influence more people. Again, my goal in life is to influence as many people as I can while I'm here, and that takes creating relationships both with clients, but not neglecting the fact that my family is the closest relationship that I have, and making that priority number one.
So if your wife comes and says it's summertime, you take her to the beach, is what you're saying, even if you're busy.
That's right. It's this is called Small Business Freedom Summit, and being a business owner, it has its responsibility, but it does give freedom. And so, you became a business owner, I would think, at least in the top 10 reasons, is that it gives you more freedom. And so, you'll work hard when it demands it, but you also play hard when it allows it. And so, making sure to have fun in life, I think a lot of people forget to have fun. And so we got to remember to enjoy the beauty in life.
Absolutely. Okay, so on relationships, I know you also write a lot about building relationships in the workplace. Like you said, you have to trust people, build a business that can sustain without you. How do you create those successful relationships, and where do you draw the lines between work and personal? And I know that sometimes they say getting too close to people breeds almost apathy, or where is that successful point where, hey, we respect each other, we like each other, we have a great work balance, but maybe we're not going out drinking on the weekends together because that might not work, or maybe it does. What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's a genuine curiosity into the lives of others. There's not a motive behind it. So many people go to networking events to hopefully clinch a sale. And so just not having a motive behind asking how their day was. I think it was, I'm going to recommend a book. Pat Lencioni wrote 3 Signs of a Miserable Job, and you might have heard of him, but he actually is my favorite writer. So, he writes great books. But he talked a bit about this very subject in his book, and just going to soccer games of a woman's kid that worked for him. And so showing genuine interest and curiosity in the lives of not only other people but that work for you, but maybe they're family members. And so that left a lasting impression on this woman that worked for him forever. And I believe she ended up working for him for years and years, just because of the relationship that they had cultivated over years of her working for him. And so, specifics, again, that goes, whether you spend time together on the weekend or not, or after work. I think that's a case-by-case scenario. And but just saying that there is, that there's not a motive involved besides wanting to impact other people positively, and also just being curious about the betterment of someone else.
So basically, you think as long as you're focused on truly building the relationship and not for a benefit or for
Yeah.
an actual workplace, that you think that's the best way to go, and that'll make it all work out. Good.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. And I think that's a worldview that goes back to someone's like true worldview of people are important. I mean, that some people stress bottom line. Do you put more importance on your bottom line or people? And knowing that when you do good, the way the world works is good will come back to you, and believing in that principle. And so, are you going to leave money on the table? Um, to again, I could have probably made a lot more money in my lifetime, but my motive is to influence more people, so I charge less. But I also work with more people for that reason. If I charged more, um, I probably wouldn't work with as many people because not as many people could afford it. But I also offer value, and so there's a lot of things that works into. You could work yourself back and and see that people are going to be always the most important thing in life. So, in my opinion, I've argued with people on this point. So, but that not going to change my mind. So,
I think most people would agree with you. People really do
yeah,
make things happen. So,
yep,
okay. So I think one other thing you touch on a lot that'd be great to talk about is the willpower. I
mm-hmm.
know a lot of business owners, they're facing that. I need to get to work. I need to put systems in place. I need to plan. I need to get to the gym. I need to be with my family. And there's only so much energy and time in the day. So willpower
Mm-hmm.
plays into that for probably every business owner out there. What techniques or tips or what do you think is important to developing it if you don't have it, and B,
Mm-hmm.
keeping it if you do have it when it gets a little rough, as it will for most business owners at some point?
Are you referring to that willpower is more important than IQ article that I recently wrote? Yeah, I've gotten some emails on that. Eh, you know, uh, that's a bold statement. That's why I worded the title that way. Because of this statement, people usually know what to do, but they don't do it. And so that is the reason I worded the title that way. Uh, you know, it goes back to my book. um, are your ideas more important than your fears? Are you chasing those ideas that you are passionate about? Those ideas that keep you up late at night, wake you up early in the morning, that consume you. And when you do, willpower becomes a lot less of an issue because you cannot stop thinking about it until you get back to your idea. And my challenge to people watching this would be, if you are not pursuing an idea that is consuming you in that way, again, balancing the rest of your life, you're not working 24/7 with neglecting people. I'm not saying that, but maybe devoting time to those things that you're passionate about. Um, you need to find those things, uh, even if you're working on the side on those things until you can make it a full-time career. And I know that you are watching this and want it as your full-time job, and you want to devote your whole life to that. But the reality is, the people that you see on the internet that are doing that, it's unfair because you have not seen the work that they have put in prior. We get these Instagram snapshots of people's lives. We see these YouTube videos, and we forget about the 20 plus years that they put in the work that there wasn't a camera on. And so I'm not a believer in these just mystical big breaks where people go from nothing to something. And as much as you viewer want that, it's not going to happen that way. And I don't want to, you know, say that you aren't expecting that, but I just want to reiterate that you know um, that things don't happen overnight. And so willpower is waking up on a daily basis with those ideas that consume you and putting work in day after day after day. The example in the article that I wrote, it wasn't business. It was diets, and so there's thousands of diets out there, and they all work. But the reason they don't work is because people don't follow through with diets. They don't make it a lifestyle. They make it a month long and drop it. And so you can apply that same principle to work. Yes, with work, life is a bunch of trial and error. If you work on something for a month, quitting is okay. I might have been the first person to tell you this. Quitting is okay. You know, if you're a quitter, you're not a loser. You know, sometimes you have to start things and quit things over and over again to find the thing that makes you wake up and keeps you up late at night. But it's that trial and error and finding that thing that consumes you, that produces willpower, that produces bravery. And so, yeah, passion controls so many things. Just does.
Okay, so last question.
Yep.
Say I'm our typical overwhelmed, overworked, burned out, distracted person that thinks they have no time and doesn't know what their passion is. And I just know from speaking to the average person, you ask them what they really want, they can't answer that. If
Okay.
I am that average person, where's that first, what's that 10 minutes, 20 minutes a day? What's that first step to get out there? You know, what's the thing that I will believe I can do if I think my life is already too busy, because that's what most people tell themselves. What's that one step I can do to get started with finding that passion so I have that drive to follow my dreams and get to where I want to get to?
Yeah. You know what? I'm a big proponent of meditation in the morning, waking up and being silent where everybody else is checking their cell phones. You know, again, it goes back to what that person wants to do. If he wants to grow a social media business, then you know, online is a big thing. But for me and my writing, I quit social media for 3 months and then 6 months and then for a year even. I didn't touch social media because the fear of missing out, which I talk about in my book. There's another plug. You got to get serious about it. And for me, writing a book, social media was the thing that was getting in my way because I couldn't stop checking it. And I had to get honest with myself about that. And so, are you, you know, I would ask people watching this, are you serious about what you're doing? How serious are you? What are you willing to give up to make the time to do what you say you want to do? And so maybe you're not going out to drink with friends on the weekend. Maybe you're not on social media. Maybe you're not on the softball team. I don't know what your life looks at currently. And if you don't have those things and your life is still completely booked, then it again goes back to how serious are you? Can you wake up 20 minutes earlier every morning? I'm not saying wake up hours earlier. 20 minutes. Can you stay up 20 minutes longer after you put your kids in bed? Whatever that looks like, communicate to your significant other. See what works best. You know, if they want you to come to bed with them every night, then wake up 20 minutes earlier. If they don't care and you work better at night, then stay up 20 minutes extra. And so that would speak to the willpower part. But finding that thing that makes them jive, that really goes back to trial and error and knowing that person. That question of what would I do for free, if nobody was looking, that's huge. Because if I get to the heart of me sometimes, when I took off social media, you know, I was big into social media, and early on it was an ego play. And so I had to get really honest with myself and, you know, who's watching, who's retweeting me. My self-worth was beginning to be based on how many likes I was getting, and I was like, forget this, I gotta walk away. And so, knowing yourself, not being who other people tell you to be or who other people want you to be, is huge. What makes you tick, not what makes mom and dad tick, or your best friend, or that guy that you see is super successful. Do you want to start a nonprofit, but you're scared about how much money you're going to make, but that clean water wells in Africa is what's been on your heart? you know, um, you'll never know unless you try. That's my last statement on that. So
That's perfect. Get a little focus in the morning, which actually I know a lot of coaches. Success rituals in the morning is a very common thing.
Yep.
Take some time and then figure out where maybe you're wasting some time that you don't realize, and try some new things until you find what you're passionate about and start pursuing it. I think that's great. And actually, I really liked the second part you added to figuring it out. What would you do if nobody else was looking? Like a lot of people say, what would you do for free? I think that's a good point, though, to add. If it was free and if you didn't have an audience, what would actually make you happy?
Because that's feeding ego. And so people need to stop feeding the ego. And that goes back to people are the most important thing on earth. It's so important. So we have to be honest with ourselves, though. We have to be honest with ourselves. We can't say what we want to be as a person and do something else. If your words have to start matching up with what you're doing, because you're tricking yourself. You're never going to become better until you're honest with yourself. You're not. Yeah, happiness. It's huge. It's huge, and even deeper than that, fulfillment. Because that self-fulfillment, I believe, is where happiness comes from. And so you have to be fulfilled. And that goes back to following your passion. It's just a trickle-down effect. I mean, passion, I believe, through my research for the last 3 years, is where everything stems from. And to get there, you have to be honest with you, with yourself. So
I think that's perfect. Well, thank you. A lot of good information. I think a lot of things business owners could use, especially when it comes to passion, finding it, using it, how to make it all work. So I really appreciate your time and your insight.
Absolutely. And one last thing is you can find passion wherever you're at. If you are currently a small business owner and you've been a small business owner for 20 years and your passion is starting to dwindle, you can still find passion. And so there's hope. And believing in that hope, and you're probably going to have to make some changes. I've dealt with people who are 20 years into the restaurant industry and they had a passion at first, but they're a chef 20 years later and they've lost their passion. And so it's important to know that you can find passion wherever you're at.
That's great. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Great talking to you. Great meeting you.
All right. You too.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.